be very mindful, guys, that when you're training, you always want to train on ideal first, because you're then going to frame things up differently. You're going to build value in a more meaningful way. And when you build value in a meaningful way, even if you do get objections, they won't be true, or what I call hard stop objections. Instead, they'll be, hey, I've got this concern. How do we work around this concern and find a solution?
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
What's up, team? Welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast with the amazing Dr. Lona Cook and myself, Dr. Bobby Lojasic, where we come to you guys every single week with those key areas in chiropractic about building a world-class office. And guys, when we put together these podcasts, we're very, very aware that we have a wide array of people that listen to us. So people that are just starting off, we call them launch and build. Maybe you're a one-person band, all the way through to people who are scale, who have dozens of team members, and then even some people that have dozens of locations. So we love putting these together. And today we're going to be training, or we're going to be talking about a very exciting topic. But before we get there, Dr. Lona, what's going on? How you doing? How's the week been?
I'm doing great. I was just telling Bobby, I'm like coming off a day with lots of conversations. So my mind has gone a million places in chiropractic today. And he was just telling me about his weekend. So Bobby, we're excited for today's podcast because we've both been training all day already, right?
I know, right? I know. We've been absolutely immersed. I know you guys had the Nashville immersion there, 600 plus people a few weeks ago. I then went on and we had the Sydney, Australia immersion here, which was 2 weeks ago. That was massive. And then I just literally got off the back of our New Zealand intensive one day. And then I had my team board meeting last week as well. So we have been training to the eyeballs, but I must say the results that we've been having in our offices have been monumental. We've absolutely been crushing it. And they say success leaves clues. So today, Lona, we are going to talk about one of those clues that successful, not just teams, but individual chiropractors always have in common every single time. In fact, today we're going to talk about something that all champions have in common. So you could be a champion chiropractic team, you could be a champion chiropractor, you could be a champion football team, or I think over there, Lona, you guys call it soccer. You can be a champion hockey team, you can be a champion basketball team. And the one thing that all those champion teams have in common, Lona, what is that? What are we going to be talking about?
We're talking about training. So the idea that you are actually going to practice what it is that you do. We're not just talking about meeting and talking about it. It's like role playing and training and getting into the nitty gritty of the day to day so that you can deliver excellence, just like Bobby said, a soccer team would or a football team would.
Exactly. So today, guys, you want to stay tuned for the entire episode, all right? Because we're going to be unpacking training and how to train like an absolute champion. Mm-hmm. And at the end, we're going to give you a giveaway as well. Okay, something that you're going to take. If you stay to the very end, we're going to give you a giveaway, something that you can take to immediately upgrade your trainings. So, Lona, I want to start off with not really a story, but just an experience that I had. So I remember when I was a youngster, and in my family, everyone plays soccer, right? European background. So I remember when I was a youngster, my dad saying once to myself and my brother, and we're both, growing up playing football, playing soccer. One of the things he used to say to us is, if you want to become world class at the sport, you have to train above and beyond everybody else. You have to completely dedicate yourself to this sport. And my brother reached quite big heights in soccer. So he was playing, at state levels, pretty big. When he was about 13, 14, he was absolutely crushing it. And yeah, the amount of training that was needed to get to that point was next level. So why don't you take us through, all right, how do I train like a champion? What's the first thing that I need to understand if I'm listening to this podcast, if I want to really level up my training experience inside of my business?
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can train on as a chiropractor, but first is recognizing, are you even doing any training? Which means you're actually going through some role playing while the patients aren't actually there, or your practice members aren't there, with yourself, if you're a one-man show or a one-woman show, or you and your CAs, or you and your full team, right? So last podcast, we were talking about the team meeting and the team huddles, which are so critical. And this is the next piece of that pie of things that should be happening routinely every week with a set amount of time devoted to role playing between you and your team, or training between you and your team. So in our office, it's 30 minutes. It's always Wednesday at 1:30. No matter if someone's on vacation, we're still doing the role playing. And we leave, we pick up where we left off the week before, and we're making it through bite by bite through our procedures and our systems in the office. So that's one way that we role play, is like systems, right? The other thing that we train on is like the excellence of giving a great adjustment, which is a whole nother level of training too. Like, can you deliver the goods? And do you take your ability to give a great adjustment as seriously as your ability to communicate about it? Like, both of those things need to be trained on. And Bobby, you got a big team, so I'd love to hear how you think about framing out how you present the training culture that you have it for your team to like a new hire, but if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lona, you said two things, in fact, multiple things there that were absolute nuggets, and I want to make sure that people who are listening don't miss that. So a couple of things that she said, guys, there that I want to just delineate for you is separate training from meeting, which means, are you actually training? And let's just be very clear, okay? Training means that you're role playing. So that's what training is. Training means that you're scripting, you are role playing. So that was one thing that Lona said. Are you actually doing training? Okay. Last week, we chatted about team meetings and we chatted about huddles. If you guys pay close attention now to the link of these podcasts, we're giving you the infrastructure, team. We're giving you the infrastructure of building and executing a world-class practice. Just follow it along. Literally, this information is worth tens of thousands of bucks, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I first say, pause. After last week's podcast, okay, because we've gone through, had a look, massive listenings to last week's podcast, okay. Have you put action steps in place to set up a pre-shift and a pro-shift huddle and routine? I don't care if you're a one-person band and you're listening to this, or if you're a team of 15 people in one location, okay? Pause and reflect. Have you done anything to upgrade or start or incorporate your pre-shift and post-shift huddle? And if not, that's step number one. All right. That's what I want you to do this week, because it's not just about listening to this and getting, a great jacuzzi experience where you feel good in the moment and then nothing happens. We want this to be transformational for you. And then step two now is I want you to start thinking about how we're going to upgrade our trainings, our weekly team trainings. Right. So that's the first thing that you said, Lona. Are you doing a training, which means are you role playing? The second thing that you mentioned there is you could be a team of one, or you could be a bigger team like myself. And I'll give you my examples in just a minute. If you are a team of one, I expect that you're still role playing with yourself. Okay. That means get in a quiet room and role play. I want you to be recording day ones on your phone and going back and listening to your day ones. I want you to be recording day twos and going back and listening to your day twos. I want you to put the phone in your adjustatorium and I want you to record half an hour of adjusting table talk. And go back and listen to yourself and see in that table talk, how much time did you actually spend pouring into people, helping enrich their experience and help them work into their chiropractic paradigm? Because the reality is, if you didn't spend time doing that, they're inversely working their way out of the chiropractic paradigm and therefore your office. Okay. So I want to make sure people didn't miss that. That was absolutely gold. And thanks for bringing that up, Lona. Yeah.
My pleasure. Yes. One more thing too, is if you're role playing by yourself, you're doing it with invisible people. Like a mentor had said to me, you want to see 100 a day and you're only seeing 70. Are you doing 30 extra adjustments on invisible people? Like, are you building the stamina to like have your body know how to go through the motions, even if the people haven't arrived yet? And that's a huge part of why we role play too, is to just set that grid work already of like, we know how to do it right and we know how to do it well.
Yeah, 100%. And guys, energy is everything. So before I answer that question, how do we train? I think this is a good time. I want to talk about, there's this scene in the movie Cool Runnings, Lona. I think you said that you've seen this movie before.
I love that. Yeah.
I love it too, right? The Jamaican bobsled team. So I think I've watched that movie at least 20 times. Now, when I talk to coaching clients on calls, okay, very often one of the things that's holding us back from breaking through to the next level is the identity that we currently hold for ourselves. Okay, so we see ourselves in a certain way, and our goals that we have for ourselves is actually a different version of you. So wherever you are right now and wherever you want to be next, you'll have to change and evolve, right, as a person. So you've got to see yourself how you evolve. So there's this great scene, okay, and it's the bar scene where they're in a bar, and I think it's the Danish team bullies one of the guys in the Jamaican bobsled team, right? And this guy gets a little bit worked up because his dad was the one that's financing the whole thing, and his dad's kind of like, "All right, you got to go back." And the Danish guys come over, who are like the kingpins in the bobsled world at that stage, and they tell this guy to quiet down, right? And he kind of goes into his shell. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." So he suppresses his energy. And then if you recall, do you remember what happens next, Lona? The next part.
I do, because this is like the best part of the movie.
Exactly. Right. So the hard guy, right, the guy that's ready for a fight, he takes him into the bathroom. He's like, "Come with me," right? And he puts him in front of the mirror. And he's like, "All right, I want you to look in this mirror and I want you to tell me what you see." Okay. And it starts off interesting, right? And he can't see much. And then the guy that's helping him is like, "Here's what I see. I see pride, right? I see power, right? I see a badass mother, who don't shake shit off no one." And then he goes, "Oh, you see all of that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I see all of that." And that's what we see, you guys, all right? So, and then he goes, "But it doesn't matter what I see, it's what you see. So I want you to tell me what you see." And the first time he says that, he's like, "Oh, I see, pride. Oh, yeah, I see pride." He's like, "I see power." Oh, yeah, I see power. And the first time he does it, no, he's not convincing anyone. And he goes again, right? And he goes, "Oh, I see pride." He's a little bit better. Still not convincing, right? He gets to the end of it, and this guy's like, again, and he's like, "I see pride, right? I see power." And he goes, "Okay, again." And then the third time I think that he does it, he's like, goes off his nut, and he goes out back in the bar and starts a big brawl. Okay.
So good.
Actually, if you think about that scene is a breakthrough that after that, that's when he goes through and he tells his father, "I'm not going back, right? We're here at the Olympics for a reason." And it's a turning point. It's an inflection point in the movie if you watch it really closely. All right. So what does that scene teach me about life? It teaches me that it's about what you see. So if you're a one-person band or a two-person band at the moment, it doesn't matter. It's what you see in the future, right, that matters. And so you want to sit down and you want to train like you already have achieved those goals in the future. So right now you could be listening to this and maybe you're a 4 DC office and you guys are gunning to crack, I don't know, 800,000 visits a week. And right now you're not there. It's like, well, what do you see? Do you see it? Because you've got to train that way.
Yes.
So that's my first starting point, because if you're a one-person band, all right, you need to go in front of the mirror and you need to get in that right state, and then you need to train. Lona said she trains for a minimum of 30 minutes. I'm going to tell you how we do it in a second, but you need to be doing the exact same thing in the right state. So when you're like listening to a recording, don't be listening to it like, "Oh, I see pride and I see power and I see a bad." No, you want to listen to that and you then want to role play the back of it with the third version of the Cool Runnings guy and not the first version of it. Makes sense?
So good. I love it. Yes. Thank you. That was gold.
Okay, so please remind yourself of that movie. Now, here's how we do this. Let's give you some training structure around this thing. So keep in mind now, Lona, with multiple locations, but if I just take our primary location, in that primary location, we've got a team of roughly around, I don't even know, I think about 15 people. So the way that we train is we have 3 types of trainings. So we have every single week a 40-minute DC only training where it's only DCs. And in that DC only training, we train on adjustments, technique, and we also train on communication. Okay, we follow what's called a training curriculum. So there's an outline of like week 1 all the way through to week 26, and we do 2 laps of that around the track per year. Sometimes we don't get to 2 laps because there can be areas that we really kind of do multiple weeks on. So DCs do a 40-minute training every single week on their own, and CAs do a 40-minute training every single week on their own, okay? My new team members have an onboarding training that they're doing specifically on their own, also with our office manager and our team leader. Then we have a combined team training that we all get to together, which it's roughly 30 minutes. So we have 15, 20 minutes of meeting, and then we have 30 minutes of training. And so that's 30 minutes of role playing where we role play all of the key interactions that happen inside of a chiropractic office, starting from day 0, which is like the first time that you contact a new patient, through to day 1, the check-in, the arrival, the office tour, the meet and greet, the handoff to a chiropractor or a tech CA. There's these key interactions, like for example, the day 2 conversion, handing someone over to our checkout CA. That's a very key 3-way interaction that occurs. And again, you might not have a checkout CA. So guess who the checkout CA is in that scenario? You are, right? And so you've got to have a way that you go into checkout CA mode. We're like, "Great, Lona, I can help you get organized with that schedule that we just discussed. So tell me, what 3 days work best for you?" Fabulous. All right. Which day you want to drop when you graduate twice a week? Excellent. You can tell that I'm trained up on this, right?
Yes.
So that's how we do it. And we do it every single week, and we follow a training curriculum. So we're not making things up as we go, but instead we have a proper structured plan that we can follow, and we get through it as soon as we start.
Bobby, does anyone ever just get to the point where they're so good at everything they don't train anymore?
Let me ask you this question, Lona. What sport do you love?
Well, as a kid, I was a geek for softball. I was a pitcher. So.
All right, well, what do you follow now? Like, do you follow any professional sport? Like, are you an NBA girl? Are you like a football
No,
girl?
I follow chiropractic. I'm pretty boring. I do a lot of yoga. Does that count?
Look at you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this question. I'm sure you know the answer. So I love, I call it football. You probably recognize it as soccer. So my team that I follow is Liverpool, best team in the world. Everyone listening to this knows that. It's really simple. Now, the best player in the world in soccer. They say it's probably it's a guy called Messi. You've heard of Messi? He's playing there in the US right now.
I haven't, but don't
Oh
hold that.
my goodness, Lona, where have you been living? All right. Anyway, he's playing there in Miami, so he's like the best player to ever play. Let me ask you this question. Do you think that he just kind of now sits back and is like, I'm the best guy to ever played. I don't need to train. I'm just going to rock up, eat what I want, do what I want, and just rock up and still be the best?
No, I don't.
What do you think he's doing? Like, probably more above than everyone else still.
Yes. Right. We used to call that like nobody gets to be a fat cat on the team, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yep, exactly right. And on my socials, right, I follow Liverpool, and it pops up on my socials. But I see, they've got training videos, and it's interesting. I watch their training videos. They're training daily, and I watch their training videos, and the players who are the biggest stars in the team are the ones that are usually leading by example and training the hardest. So you see them running the drills, you see them at the front of the drills, you see them like getting down, you see them sweating their ass off. You see like also how their physiques build. They're also like, the strongest, the most fit, the most powerful. You see that, and that doesn't happen by chance. I always say fitness is a good example of it, because you can't make up fitness. You can't just like look jacked if you don't train properly. And so I see it in world-class teams, and we could spend all day here just giving examples of team after team. But whatever sport you follow, guys, right now when you're listening to this, just in your mind, think about the top players in that sport and ask yourself the question, do I think this person trains their ass off?
Right.
I think you'll get the answer.
And that's just sports. It's not people's health in your hands, right? Like, so, we got to take this very seriously, which leads us into what we're going to bring up next week. So you'll want to listen into our next episode too, which is on becoming a world-class leader. So.
Yep, spot on. Exactly right. So talk us a little bit about, all right, so I want to train. I understand this, but there's so many different people. And so there's the difficult person, there's the introverted person, there's the maxima. Like, how do I train? Do I train an ideal? Do I train an objection? Like, when you've given me the structure now of how you train, but what do I do? So I've recorded myself on a day one, and I want to now train how I'm going to go through a day one with the next person. Who should I visualize in my mind when I'm doing this training? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think for sure at first you just got to get where you're like good at training for your ideal client. And then also like there's levels of training, right? So we all know that we all have different personalities too. So there's like, in disc profile, there's ways that you can look at a driver personality versus a like more introverted, calculating personality. There may be things that you fine tune in how you'd train for different personalities of how you'd lead them through the process, but we don't get into that until we've already become very, very good at just training for like our ideal person and how we deliver the systems and process to them, and excellent adjustments. So again, you can take that training and go to next level with things. And Bobby, I like what you had said about this. So I'd love for you to give your answer about how you guys train and why you train a certain way.
So just to make it clear for everyone, so you guys hear it loud and clear. So Lona, you guys first train on ideal. So you train on the person that's the ideal, that's great, that follows, that listens, that is like, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you heard it there, guys, loud and clear from a world-class team. Okay, train an ideal. And let me just reaffirm, we do exactly the same. All right. Now, you asked me to chime in on this, so I'm going to give you my experience about why we do this. I'm a big believer that what you put out and the energy that you put into the world is the energy that you receive back. So If you believe that, then you need to be very mindful always of the energy that you're putting out into the world. Now, I train on ideal first for two reasons. Okay. Reason number one, and above all else, is because if I'm putting out vibes into the universe of ideal people, guess what I'm going to be attracting to my office, Lona?
Less than ideal.
No, but if I put energy into ideal people,
Oh, yes. You're going to attract ideal candidates.
Exactly. I'm going to attract ideal. So it never ceases to amaze me when I'm at an immersion. So actually a couple of weeks ago in Sydney, as coaches, we make our way around the room and we're doing role playing. So our immersions and intensive guys, we role play. It's not just about good ideas. It's about roll up the sleeves and let's build this into your nervous system. So we role play. And as I move around the room, there was this one pocket of the room that I would get to all the time. And every single time, there'd be training there, this person would be like, what about the person that's like this, and gives this really difficult, like this really just, can I call it annoying example? Okay.
Yes.
They're always like busting somebody's balls about like, okay, so we're training on, reporter findings conversion and how you give recommendations of time, energy, and money. So here's how long it's going to take. All right. Hey, here's the care plan, what it looks like. Great. Last question is finances, costs. Here's how it works. And here are your options. And this kind of person was the one that was like, when we're role playing, that was like, well, yeah, I can't afford that. And so he's looking to see how I'm going to objection manage that. Oh, I can't afford that. Oh, wow, that many times I can't come that often. And after a while, I noticed this trend with this particular chiropractor. They just kept going to that, like, can't afford that. What in the role play? So after a while, I paused and I asked this person, I'm like, okay, do you get that in your office? And he's like, yeah, I get a lot of that in my office. I'm thinking in my mind, I wonder why. Sarcastically, if you didn't sense it, right? I'm like, the reason you're getting so much of that is because that's what you're attracting. You're putting that vibe out there. And so you continue to get those people. I honestly can't remember the last time someone in a reporter finding said to me, just point blank, I can't afford that. Now, that's not to say that I haven't had financial objections, okay? But I have not had somebody that says to me, just, I can't afford that. And we don't have a solution. Because if someone did just point blank say to me, oh, I can't afford that, that many times, what that actually means is it means in a more detailed level that I have framed it up in a way earlier where they don't have the value for it. So they're just putting a hard stop. Oh, I can't afford that. So it stops here. Rather than giving me a solution, because think about this. The person saw value, then even if they couldn't afford it, they wouldn't point blank say, I can't afford that. You would more likely hear something like, okay, is there another way that you can do that? Can you break that down to like different amounts? Or you might even have people ask you, is it possible to pay as you go? And even if someone says, is it possible to pay as you go? They're not going to say it with the tone of, oh, okay, I'll just pay as I go. Because that tone is actually communicating to me, I don't believe you yet, which means I actually haven't done a good enough job in the general report. We're getting specific now with like reporter findings, okay? But if the person is like genuine in their concern of like, oh, okay, can you break it down to smaller amounts or is it possible to like pay as you go? What that's telling me is they've got value for it, but they're trying to find a cash flow way to make it work for themselves. So be very mindful, guys, that when you're training, you always want to train on ideal first because you're then going to frame things up differently. You're going to build value in a more meaningful way. And when you build value in a meaningful way, even if you do get objections, they won't be true or what I call hard stop objections. Instead, they'll be, hey, I've got this concern. How do we work around this concern and find a solution? Does that make sense? Did that answer that question, Lona?
Yes, that was great. Super good nuggets. As you're talking about that too, I was thinking like maybe you're someone who's listening and you're like, okay, I know I need to get my team role playing again, or I need to get role playing. Let's say you have one other team member. Like what I want you to hear too is that just like you have to come to the table with like, hey guys, let's start huddling. This is the time we're going to get here. You're going to have to do the same for your role playing, where you're going to have to like come with a plan. Here's how we're going to train. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it first. I'm going to teach you guys how we're going to role play. And lo and behold, a quarter from now or half a year from now, like everybody's going to just know this is what we do. This is the culture here. So, at first it can feel like a lot to get some of these things in place if you have been used to just showing up and jumping in and not being prepared, but it's going to allow you to grow and really honestly serve people better. So there's so many reasons to do it. You know, I know we've named quite a few, but I just want to implore you to like look at your schedule and figure out where you can start to add in some role playing and some training for yourself and your team.
Yeah, exactly. And the takeaway, guys, is always role play first and ideal. Just burn it into your nervous system, ideal. So do laps around the track, ideal, ideal, ideal. Okay, the person that understands, it's easy, that gets it, because A, you're going to attract more of that. But B, here's the second reason. I said there was two reasons. And the second reason is when you get really confident and ideal, then objection management actually becomes pretty simple. And let me tell you why. I used to think that there was, in this example of training, so I've gone down the rabbit hole of training day twos now, so let's just stay with that. I used to think that the reason somebody wouldn't start care, that there's like an endless amount of reasons. That was my initial impression. You know, they could give you this endless list why they can't start care. Then I used to think, oh, there's at least over 100 reasons people don't start care. And then I used to think, oh, there must be at least 20 reasons. And then really what I distilled it down to is there's like three main reasons, and they all come down to one cause of why someone doesn't start care. Okay. And you know, time, energy, money, you've got to get agreement on time, energy, money. So they see a disconnect in either time, they feel as though they don't have the time, but let's be honest, everyone can make the time. They don't have the energy, which is a value thing, and they don't have a money, which money is usually a cash flow thing rather than money. So there is a small percentage of people that absolutely cannot afford it. And if you're attracting a lot of those people, then you got to have a look at your marketing. Because your marketing is attracting those kinds of people. But it's usually a cash flow thing. So what I recognize is if there's only three primary reasons, right, that somebody doesn't start care, what I'm better off doing is rather than trying to manage objections when they pop up, just build those reasons into your sales process, or i.e. into your pre-framing, so that people actually answer those reasons for themselves in their own mind as you're going through the process. And by doing so, what you do is I call them hurdles or obstacles, and you don't get objections. So if you have someone on day one that says to you things like, yeah, I'm just so busy, okay, and you know, I just don't have time. I don't even have time for myself, like, you know, because my kids occupy my time. If I pick that up on day one, I don't want to wait to day two to give them a recommendation of care before like they bring that up again as an objection. Instead, I'm going to, even on day one, handle things and say, so Lona, is this something that's important to you? Because if it's important to you to get your body back in time, how are you going to find the time? Oh, well, I'm going to have to look deeper. I'm going to have to find the time somewhere. Okay. Handle it on day one. Okay. That's going to be the key, because then it's a hurdle that you can object. Although one of the things that I know is correcting something like this takes time. So what we're going to need to do is find the time. So let's work together to work out, all right, what's going to work for you? Because, hey, we're here till X amount of time during the evenings or whatever you're open, right? It becomes a hurdle to overcome through your sales process rather than ignoring it and waiting to the end. And then someone says, oh, I can't do that. I haven't got time. I've got to think about this. I've got to check. I've got to delay, which, let's be honest, only costs them more time in the future, that very asset that they say they don't have.
Right. So good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very true. You know, one thing I think about too, Bobby, is like, you know, we're using the example of training on your conversion process. And, you know, traditionally, I think when chiropractors train, they train heavily on day one, day two, and like just leave the rest of like the trajectory for the patient of like, oh yeah, okay, they get it, they're coming in, right? And instead, like, can you train really, really well on like how you take care of what I would consider like your people? Like they're trusting you, they're coming in. How do you steward them through their initial care plan, their first reevals, you know, onward to a year into care, many years into care? Do we train around that as well? So just making sure that you build that in as well when you're thinking about this like life cycle of like the patient journey.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good time to bring this all together, because we said at the start that we want to give you an asset. We want to give you a tool, something that can help guide you through this training process. Okay. Lona, you hit the nail on the head when you said most will train on day one, day two, and that's where the training stops. And we want to stop there. We want to build mastery across all parts of the patient experience. So to help guide you through this, guys, one of the things that we recognize as the biggest objection to training is people get lost. What do I train on now? Okay, or what do I train on next? Or like day one, day two, what should I train on now? Do I train on like table talk? And then they've missed all these key things that happen between day two and table talk, like the break-in appointment, like the pre-framing from CAs, pre-framing from DCs, right? Building ideal patients. So we want to give you an asset, guys. We call it inside the micropractice the training curriculum. It's a 26-week outline, so week 1 through to 26 of every single part of the patient experience and process. So you can start on day 0. And you can follow that curriculum, whether you're a team following the curriculum or whether you're an individual on your own following the curriculum. We're going to give you that so that you have guidance, you have a clear path, and you know exactly what you should be training on. A, all the way through to Z, or I think you say Z, right?
Z. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So that is yours, guys. If you want access to the training curriculum, it's going to be in the show notes. Please download it. And all I ask is that you use it and you incorporate it to level up your training. Because remember, the version of yourself that you see in the future is the version of yourself that you're going to attract.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Bobby.
Awesome. Dr. Lona, pleasure as always. There you go, guys. Training like a champion. If you're enjoying this podcast, please, guys, you can help us out by doing two things. Subscribe to the podcast. There's 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. If you click on them, you can follow and subscribe to the podcast. And also go ahead and give us a 5-star podcast review. It really helps us get out to more people, help more chiropractors, help more people, and save more lives, which is exactly what we're all about. You guys are amazing. Lona, thank you as always. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you real soon.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.